This is a video response to Kayev, and I'm responding to the perceived futility of atheist versus theist discussions. And what I'd like to say is that for thousands of years people didn't even talk about this stuff at all. And not discussing it at all is certainly more damaging than simply than having a little bit of disagreement, a little bit of contention between different points of view. You know, invariably, whenever you get two people who don't agree already in the same room and have them talk about a particular concept, they're not going to agree right away. There's going to be a lot of discussion and argument and maybe even a little bit of name-calling, but ultimately you either have a better understanding of the other person's point of view or you yourself are converted. Now, personally, I don't think that conversion happens too often anywhere, YouTube, any context. However, when it does happen, it doesn't happen because the person somehow learned about the other person's point of view through osmosis. They had to be told of it. They had to have discussions, critical discussions sometimes, to understand it. Or in other cases, they're simply converted through the weight of emotion or for the fact that their friends believe a certain way and therefore they will start to believe that way too. But I think that the best way for a person to be converted to another way of thinking is for them to be informed of the other person's point of view and then to make an equally informed decision that they would like to subscribe to that point of view. And obviously this can't happen at all if people don't discuss these things. The second thing I'd like to talk about would be the idea that the atheist and the theist positions are perfectly equivalent. That the two are based on scientific evidence, both of them, and that they're both based on the same styles of argument, and as a result they're doomed to deadlock every time. Well, I'd like to point out that the scientific method is designed specifically to prevent such deadlocks. If two ideas in science contradict one another, then at most one of them is right. And what's more is it's possible to construct an experiment to test both of these two ideas to determine which one is more accurate. Now, in the atheist and the theist discussions, you have the existence or the non-existence of God. And obviously one of them is right and the other one is wrong. God can't simultaneously exist and non-exist at the same time. The question becomes, which one is correct? Well, if we wanted to, and both were scientific claims, then we could construct an experiment to determine which one is right, and we could answer the question once and for all. I'd go as far as to say that both the hard atheist position that God does not exist anywhere and the firm theist position that God definitely exists but can't be measured are both unscientific claims. I'll tackle the atheist position first. First of all, the idea that God doesn't exist anywhere isn't scientific because you can't be everywhere at once to verify whether or not this is true. So at best we can say that God doesn't exist under certain contexts. For example, we could say that God doesn't answer prayer, or if he does, he doesn't do it any better than statistically expected. From the theist position, we say that the theist says God does exist, but he can't be measured. Well, that's an equally unscientific claim, because if God can't be measured, then the claim that God exists can't be scientific, because science requires measurement for a conclusion to be considered scientific. Whether or not God answers prayers, or whether or not God talks to people, or any of these other claims by the religious types that God does these things, can be scientifically tested, and as a result, the claim that God answers prayers is a scientific claim that can be answered. If it is a scientific claim that can be answered, then we can allow the machinery of science to operate on the claim, and then accept whatever result comes out at the end. Now, this expects that both participants are rational. In other words, that if their claims are disproven, if their position is disproven, that they would stop believing as they do. And I find that most theists are irrational in this respect, and most atheists are rational. And to make this more clear, let me give you a thought experiment. If your position were disproven, that is to say, if the existence of God were proven if you were an atheist, or if the existence of God were disproven if you were a theist, would you continue to believe as you do? And if the answer to the question is yes, then your beliefs cannot possibly be rational. I think that once the rationality of both participants has been ascertained, then it is possible to have a rational discussion about whatever it is that both parties believe in. The two positions are definitely not equal, and their argumentative styles, while similar to the outsider or even to one of the participants, are not similar at all. At least one of them is using a different tactic, and it is possible to determine objectively which one of the two that is.